Morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing fantastically well. My name is Conor McGilligan. This is One Leeds, and this is another little general video this morning. I feel it's quite poignant at this moment in time, maybe to go through the scenario. I had a little bit of a feeling that things would change a little bit over the weekend, and things definitely have changed when it comes to maybe Leeds United going forward, other teams, and we're going to get onto that in this video and the way forward. So please slap a like on the video. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel as always, and please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. So Opta had Leeds United the second easiest fixture run before the Tottenham Hotspur game. Leeds, from that point onwards, have lost 3 out of the next 4 games, beating West Ham United in a crucial test of our mettle, really. Obviously, at the weekend, we've gone to Brighton and got, well, it has to be said, absolutely hammered. And this is quite a generalised video as well. We're not going to be getting into the real deep dive tactical sort of aspects of that game. We've sort of done that in the match review. And the reason we didn't do ups and downs yesterday was because I felt when it came to ups and downs, I do need to do that video more often. But I felt I needed a bit of time out. The match review, I felt really conclusively got into absolutely everything. If I do say so myself, it was probably one of the better match previews I've done, or match reviews I've done, so make sure you check that out afterwards. But I feel like I basically touched on everything that I needed to touch on in that post game, so there's no point in repeating myself. So things have changed obviously from that point, and now we, as the headline says just below, the Leeds United path ahead is something of which we need to all talk about. Leeds, as you'll see on the thumbnail, they've got Nottingham Forest coming up, they've got Aston Villa at home, and then they get into the dreaded period of City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and the sort of big games of which Leeds then go into a little bit further onwards, of having, you know, the likes of Brentford, Palace and Sunderland in the next sort of 3. So that is a period of which the 14th of December to the 21st of December, of which Leeds have really must-win games in there. Leeds have got to a point as well now where the point tally of which we're at, which is 11 points in, and it was 9 games, wasn't it? And now obviously it's the 10th game as past. Leeds is still on for a point per game, which is good. You know, if you'd have offered me that, if you'd have offered me that at the start of the season, I would 100% have taken that. And Leeds were quite unlucky when it came to the fixture list, I felt, because we had a really tough fixture list to start off with. And I do feel that. And I felt the Brighton game and the Nottingham Forest game in general, when Opta had us having the easiest run in the Premier League. I'm looking at Spurs, I'm looking at Brighton, and I'm looking at Forest. But obviously it goes on teams' form, it goes on where they are in the table. And at that point, you know, Brighton weren't doing that well. You know, before the weekend started, there wasn't anything separating us. Nottingham Forest and where they are. And of course, Tottenham Hotspur coming into proceedings were one of Leeds' toughest games in the next 5. But there is context to be applied to those 5 games that were deemed the second easiest in the Premier League by Opta. However, going forward with Leeds' 5 games after that block ends, which will be against Nottingham Forest, the degree of difficulty definitely ramps up again. And we know in the Premier League that it is relentless, it's ruthless. And I guess, you know, what's the optics of this Leeds United side? And then what is the point of this video, I guess? Well, it is to just look at this path ahead and to deem it, what do we need to do going forward, really? And hopefully Leeds United are planning for the January window quickly, and that is happening right now. I'm really hoping Farke sat down and is currently doing deals in his sleep and all this sort of stuff, and maybe he's talking to personnel and players, of which on the 1st of January they come into this Leeds United side in that forward line. That has to happen. I'm hoping there's, you know, we're going a little bit further forward when it comes to Daniel Farke, and maybe there's a little bit of an adaptability when it comes to this Nottingham Forest side. How are Leeds going to shape up? We look at the weekend that's just happened. West Ham have looked reinvigorated against Newcastle. They battered them. I thought they were a much better side. They put what needed to happen with this West Ham United side into action with the likes of Potts in the midfield. They brought Matías Fernandes in that midfield as well, partnered with Lucas Paqueta, and I thought it really worked. The balance looked good. And West Ham looked to West Ham of old, really. Bowen was getting the run of his marker as well. He looked like he was enjoying himself. They hit the post. West Ham looked really good at the weekend, it has to be said, under a lot of pressure. So with those changes, and that's what West Ham have. Obviously, they have those changes at their disposal. They've got the likes of Magassa. They had the likes of Matías Fernandes. They had the likes of Potts on the bench. They had the ability to change. We, to a certain extent, don't have that. And that's where you look at the San Francisco 49ers. But I also look at Wolves. Wolves have made a managerial change now. Is it too late for Wolves? I think it is. I think Wolves are relegated right now. So it is a case of planning for the future with Wolverhampton Wanderers. But once again, back-to-back wins in the Premier League. Vitor Pereira, toward the back end of the Premier League campaign without Matthias Cunha, got 5 wins out of 7. If they're able to do that again and conjure that up again, then you never know. Wolves could be right back into it. I think it is going to be too tough, though. Getting back-to-back wins in the Premier League is so hard. And I guess that's where we're looking as well. That win against West Ham was big, but I feel like at some stage that there has to be, and maybe there had to be in this period of time, a run of games for Leeds United where you're able to build up a little bit of momentum, confidence. It feels like at the minute we're just hitting a brick wall after we're able to, after we get that win, it's a loss, and then it's a draw, or it's a loss and a loss, then a draw. And I guess when you look at the Brighton game, and a lot of people will turn around and say, Connor, we didn't expect us to win, although I do think that is false. Maybe it is hope from a lot of the fan base going into it on match day, but there was a lot of one Leeds at least, which I believe is a forum in itself, stating that Leeds were going to win at the weekend, or at least get a point. Obviously, naturally, that changes after the game because people, it's the sort of copium, isn't it, that we're never going to get a point at Brighton, and I get that. But I did look at Brighton as a tougher game than Nottingham Forest. There is no doubt about that. But I am now looking at it and thinking to myself, okay, the Brighton game wasn't great. They did play midweek. They did have 7 players out, and they absolutely battered us in that second half. Not great optics-wise. But you've got to brush yourself off for that. And then you've got to go to Nottingham Forest. And I think Leeds have got to win. And I keep saying this, and a lot of people keep saying it. It's like, Connie, you keep talking about the must-wins. There are a lot of must-wins in this Premier League campaign. If you go through a run of losses and losses and losses, people think you can just jump back to a winning game. It doesn't happen. It's going to be very difficult for Wolves to just jump back to that winning, mentality of which, they've not had in a large period of time. It's very difficult, and because the teams are so good in the Premier League, the depth is so vast, the quality is obviously there. It's extremely difficult just to get off at a losing run and then just come straight back on it. And Leeds aren't on a losing run. The last result we had at home was a win. We've got to get better away from home. We've got to get better. We've got to adapt away from home. The leaking of goals now is really worrying. It's really worrying. It's got to a point now where even the West Ham game, where they're not really in it, and Leeds are defending well, they still manage to score. Leeds are averaging, I think it's 2 goals per game conceded now. That has to be sorted. That has to be something Daniel Farke works on, because we can talk about going forward, but at the back, Leeds reinforced really well in the summer. We all know that. Aside from a probably Gabby Goodmanson left-back replacement, of which James Justin looked quite adept to when he's come in and been on that side against West Ham. So you might say, well, that bit is absolutely fine in terms of positionally. Leeds have got a good defensive structure, and they've invested well when it comes to recruitment in a defensive structure. With the likes of Anton Stack coming in as a number 6, one of the best Bundesliga players in terms of production. From a defensive perspective, blocks, interceptions, aerial duels. You've got Sean Longstaff, who comes in, who's that player with energy, endeavour, etc., and is a good tackler, has got a really high tackling percentage rate. Tanaka, who can drop into that 6 and dictate play as well. And then you've obviously looked at Ethan Ampadu, who I am criticising at the minute for ball watching, which I think is becoming a little bit of a part of Ethan's game, especially towards the last 10, 15 minutes of matches. We have examples of that now. But then you've also got, the likes of Jacobiol at the back, Pascal at the back, Gabby Goodmanson, who's been the best player, Jaden Bogle, who's adapted really well, a new goalkeeper. So you've, Bornau, if you really want to do it. But the whole point is here, there's been reinforcements at the back. So defending from the front is obviously a thing, but we can complain as much as we want about the forward line and how that's not been invested in. But Leeds have to get better at the back. We have to get better at the back. Nobody's talking about that right now, and I don't know why. I don't know why these questions aren't being asked in the press conference. Why are Leeds now conceding X amount of goals per game? Why are Leeds United now looking very, very vulnerable at the back, even when we're sitting in a deep block? Why are Leeds playing 3 defensive players in the midfield and still looking like we're going to concede? I thought every time Brighton were coming forward in that second half, they were going to score, Away from home, it needs to be sorted out. Leeds have to get points on the road. We can't just not get points on the road and rely on Elland Road. As much as we love it, as much as it's a brilliant place, and we picked up wins there. We've also picked up wins against Wolverhampton Wanderers. We've got 3 wins so far, but Brighton had 3 wins. You know, at the start of proceedings on Saturday, they also had 3 draws and 3 losses. And look, Brighton are brilliant. They're a very good side, but we had to make that more difficult for them. We lied over, we lay down and got our belly tickled in that second half. It wasn't good enough. We didn't respond. We couldn't respond. And for me, it was mismanaged to an extent. But there's got to as well be accountability on the players. But then I keep looking at the players and thinking, against the Brighton side, there's got to be a system of which you are strong, you are diligent, you're resilient, and you stay in the game, you know, and that has to be from strategy. But the players have also got to figure this out on the pitch. And I feel like maybe with what Longstaff said very, very early on in the campaign, where he said, look, they've got to believe in themselves a little bit more. Do they believe in themselves to be able to figure it out on the pitch? Because not everything can come from Daniel Farke. Not everything. You've got to be able to figure it out on the pitch. And I'm not sure these Leeds United players at the minute are capable of doing so. Now, there's January talk already. There's our Leeds are looking at so-and-so, looking at a central attacking midfielder. We're looking at a striker. It feels very important. Very, very important. And once again, you look at the path ahead, and we'll just have a quick look at these fixtures, which are on the thumbnail. You know, Forest away is now massive. Absolutely massive for the Whites. Then we have an international break of them, which is going to break up that momentum once again. Leeds then play Villa at home. You know, Villa have got 7 wins in 8 at this moment in time. Then you've got City away, Chelsea at home, Liverpool at home, Brentford away, Palace at home, Sunderland away, Liverpool away, Man United at home, Newcastle away. It's a run. It's an absolute run. And I mentioned this very quickly at the start of proceedings, up and around about till the 7th. And then Leeds have a 10-day break before they play Fulham at home. And we might have a few games of which there you're looking at Leeds versus Fulham at home, Everton away, Forest at home. You know, you're looking at those and you're thinking maybe we can get something there. But the reason I'm trying not to look too much at this whole 16th place in the Premier League now is because I know the other teams do have tough games as well. But I think Leeds have got to get to that point where the games that we're like we're not expecting to get anything from away from home, we've got to start getting something. We've got to start being tougher. We've got to start being a little bit more pragmatic. We've got to start with the obvious choices. And Nottingham Forest feels absolutely massive. I think the big thing is everybody, you know, it's not like, I mean, I said Brighton would win the game against Leeds 3-1, but I just expected maybe a little bit more than us to have our first shot on the 84th minute away from home. The big issue is Leeds United away from home, I think, are extremely poor. I think we're looking extremely poor. We're looking vulnerable at the minute. And I think any team would fancy their chances against Leeds. And I think at Elland Road, it's very different. I think, obviously, we've got the crowd on our side. We look very, very tough to beat. I'll have Newcastle, Bournemouth, Everton. But as well, kind of, you're looking at these games and you're looking at Leeds beating an Everton side. You're looking at us holding Bournemouth and being a better side than Bournemouth for the majority of that game. Newcastle as well. And you think, in a way, on the road, you should be able to compete with Brighton. For me, in that game, we didn't compete with Brighton. And that's a severe issue right now. Can you as well make your team, I've said this before, but can Farke make his team a little bit more resilient away from home? Of course he can. Of course he can. And the facts don't lie. Fulham 1-0. We beat Wolves. Brilliant. Okay, but everybody's beating Wolves at this moment in time. It's a pathway to 3 points, 2 points in 10. Wolves are down. They're the facts. Burnley. Leeds have lost 2-0, not scored again. 5-0 Arsenal, of which we set up very, very poorly. And now 3-0 Brighton, of which we were absolutely battered in that second half when there should have been a response. I think the ultimate aim at Farke right now, and I also don't want to hear in the press conference that there's nothing to analyze. I don't want to hear that. There is stuff to analyze. I want to hear why we're leaking goals now at the back. You know, why is that happening? Why away from home are we really struggling? I don't want to hear the fact that I don't want to hear, it's not even a fact. I don't want to hear you telling me that there's nothing to analyze. There is stuff to analyze. There's stuff to talk about after that. I want to know A, B, and C. What is happening with the structure of this club? Why are the players ball watching at this moment in time? I shouldn't say structure of the club, structure of the team, because that's not on Farke. But the structure of the team, you know, why are the players ball watching at this moment in time? We saw it with Stack against Burnley. We've seen it with Ampadu against Bournemouth. We've seen it with Ampadu at the weekend as well. You know, we've got the defensive reinforcements right now. We've got our targets. Beal was one of the main targets. Stack was one of the main targets. Goodmanson was the main target at left back. You know, Perry was a massive target. They made a big thing about that. Yeah. there's got to be Leeds being a bit tighter. We lose at the weekend to Brighton 1-0, and we get, we're tough at the back. You can kind of legislate for it. You can go, all right, fair enough. Fair enough. But to get absolutely battered and every single time they go forward, they look like they're going to score, that's a big issue. It's a big issue. So we can talk about the forward line. What about the defensive side of the games? Staying in matches that we seem to do at Elland Road to a certain extent, but away from home, Jesus, it's poor. It really is poor. Um, so yeah, it's as I say, guys. I mean, you can even chuck Sheffield Wednesday in there if you want. Yeah, if you want to chuck another away result in there. So there's a lot. It feels like there's a lot to dissect here with Leeds United in the general standpoint, and it's not just a gun pointed at Daniel Farke's head. The play, and I don't want to do that every single time. I really don't, because it's not all down to Farke. The accountability of the players has to be there because they're the ones on the pitch making stupid decisions at points. But I've said this at the weekend. There is a fearfulness, in my opinion, of this Leeds United side at the minute. And once again, in these away games, I can't see players hiding. You really cannot see players hiding. The options up front are poor. I agree with you with Nonto. I agree with a lot of you with Nonto being back. I think it hopefully opens up a few more options. A fully fit Dan James can potentially give us a little bit more on that counter attack. But overall, things drastically have to improve. The 49ers need to be having the pen to paper in January to be bringing a couple of bodies in 100%. But Farke has to sort this defensive problem out, which is now becoming a problem. And Nottingham Forest already feels absolutely massive right now. It's a huge game. 3 losses in 4. They've got to stem the bleeding away from home at this moment in time, Leeds United. And yeah, guys, let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below when it comes to the path forward and what Leeds United need to get and where the problems are. Really is interesting. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys very soon.